Hi, today I'm going to present you EONTech's Fluorion hepatitis C virus detection kit, and also I'm going to set up a qPCR reaction using this kit. Okay, this is Fluorion's hepatitis C virus detection kit, and this is its content. Okay, let me show you what we have inside the kit. First, we have a PCR grade water. We also have 4 standards, starting from standard 1 up to standard 4. We have a PCR mix containing the chemicals and enzymes necessary for the reaction. We also have a reverse transcription mix. Reverse transcription mix should always be kept on ice. We have 2 tubes for detection mixes, 1 and 2, and those tubes should always be kept in the dark. We have a positive control. We also have internal control. This internal control, normally it doesn't come ready to use. So you should dilute the contents inside using the internal control buffer. Okay, now we are done with the extraction of the samples and the standards. But before we go on with the reaction, I have to remind you that we do not recommend multiple time freeze and thawing. So if you plan to do more than 3 times, please alucot the components. Okay, now before we go on with the reaction, we should isolate our standards and our samples either manually or using an automated system. And the same procedure should be applied to all the tubes. And the tubes should be also supplemented with internal controls. Okay, now we have our standards and the samples, and on an ice rack we have our components. For today I'm going to prepare a reaction for 6 tubes, 4 for the standards, 1 for the samples, and 1 for the negative control. And if you need it, you can also add an extra tube for the positive control. Okay, and another important point, you have to just have a PCR form like that next to you. And in this form, the components and the volume calculations that you had done beforehand should be written down. And before I proceed, let me remind you that you should always wear your powder-free gloves, your lab coat. The environment that you work on should be free of the contaminants. And you should also use filtered tips and sterile tubes throughout the experiment. Okay, now I am ready to prepare the master mix, and I'm going to start with pipetting the water. But before that, you should be sure that all the components are completely melted down, and we should just mix them or vortex them, and we should spin them down. Another important point is that you shouldn't vortex the reverse transcription mix, but you can spin it down so you can use it for the further steps. Okay, now we are ready to prepare the master mix. First, I'm going to pipette the water. Directly into the tube. And I will proceed with the detection mix 1, 2, the reverse transcription mix, the reaction buffer, and the master mix will be completed. And each time I put a different component, I should change to the filter tip. Okay, now our master mix is ready to use. We can flick it to mix it. We can also vortex it very briefly. And we should spin it down. Okay, now we can disperse the contents to the reaction tubes. I'm going to pipe it down 20 microliters of the master mix to each tube. And I'm going to pay attention to not create any kind of bubbles. So I'm going to pipe it down directly to the bottom of the tubes. In case there is any bubble remaining inside, you can always spin it down, but very briefly. Okay, now all our mixes is inside the tubes. Now we are ready to put our standards and the samples inside. I'm going to take 5 microliters from the standard 1, and I'll pipette the standard directly inside the tube. After I'm finished, I'm going to close the cap, and I will keep going with the rest of the tubes. And the closing of the cap is important in order to avoid the cross-contamination, and I'm going to discard the filter tip each time I put a sample. Okay, for the last one, for the negative control, instead of the sample, I'm going to put 4 microliters of water and 1 microliter for internal control inside. Okay, now our reaction tubes are ready. We have to check for the caps to be tightly closed. And we also have to check if we have a bubble or not inside the tube. Now, if we are ready to go, we can now put all these tubes inside our instrument and start the qPCR program. And I'm going to place the tubes into the instrument. After I'm finished with the placement, then I'm going to close the door. Please don't forget to mark the wells that you have tubes on. And now we can proceed with the software. Here on the software, we have the concentration of the standards, and those are defined as instructed in the kit's manual. We also have one well for the sample, and I'm already marked the negative well. Okay, now we are done with the setup. Now we have to start the PCR protocol, and this protocol should be set once again following the instructions written in the manual. And I have already made sure that the Sci5 and the FEM channels of the instrument are selected. So I'm now okay to go on and press the start button.